What is up, everybody? I'm Get Flanked, and even though Fuze has been in the game since the very beginning, I think that there's probably no other operator in the game whose potential is as unrealized for the average player as Fuze. There's been a lot of discussion recently about the current meta in Rainbow Six Siege and how defenders have so much utility that attackers have to deal with, from shields to bulletproof cameras to evil eyes, a lot of stuff there. And when you start really digging into it, you begin to realize that Fuze is the answer to those problems for attackers in a lot of situations. The problem is that most players in ranked aren't playing Fuze correctly, and I will 100% admit that I was one of those players for a very long time, and I'm still learning how to get the most out of Fuze and really tap into his potential. And I think the reason that a lot of players struggle with Fuze right now is because of a mindset, okay? And it has to do with when you start the game. Fuze is one of the strongest operators in the game for beginners, especially when you're playing against other beginners. I honestly think that most new players in the game are a Fuze main when they first get started, at least at some point for a while. I mean, who hasn't gone up on a window, placed a cluster charge, let it go, and gotten 2 or 3 kills and thought, wow, that's amazing, I'm going to do that every time. And it works against beginners. The problem is that as you play more and more and you start playing against people who have been playing the game longer and who are better, the cluster charge doesn't begin to get those kills anymore and actually can lead to you dying. It's loud. People know when it's deploying. They have a really good idea of where it's deploying. And if you try deploying it on a window that's right on site, a lot of times you're going to get killed because they're going to hear it and shoot you. And thus begins people starting to forget about Fuze and not use him anymore. I think that the biggest mistake that people make when using Fuze is that they have extreme tunnel vision with his gadget. There's no other operator in the game where people get so focused on just using that operator's gadget that they lose sight of everything else going on in the round. So many people, when they pick Fuze, are just thinking about where they're going to go to lay down those cluster charges, and then within the first minute of the round, all 3 of them are gone. They didn't get much out of it, and now what? And I think that we've got to change that mindset first. When we're talking about people playing Fuze wrong, I think the best way to start this conversation is just to forget about his gadget right now. We're going to come back to it because it's got a ton of potential, as I mentioned before. But for right now, forget about that gadget. Forget that Fuze is the operator with the cluster charge. Instead, think about Fuze as the operator with the best gun in the game. That is not an exaggeration. Fuze's AK-12 is the best gun in the game. It does an astounding 638 damage per second. That is amazing. For comparison purposes, Twitch's F2 does a damage per second of 602. So that's lower than the AK-12 that Fuze has, and it has significantly more recoil. And I'm just trying to paint the picture of just how good this weapon is. So how is it that the operator with the best gun in the game isn't being picked very often? If you look at the win deltas consistently, Fuze is down there near the bottom as far as pick rate. Well, it's because that weapon, the AK-12, is attached to an operator who is a 1-speed 3 armor. And there's a lot of people who do not feel comfortable using the 1-speed operators on attack. But being a 3 armor attacker isn't all bad. The fact is that you're going to be able to take more damage with Fuze than you would with pretty much any other attacker in the game. And when you combine a weapon that absolutely melts with an attacker that requires more bullets to kill unless they're landing headshots, it means that you're going to win a lot of your gunfights. The clip you're watching on the screen right now perfectly demonstrates exactly what I'm talking about here. You're going to see me getting kills with the AK-12, how effective that weapon is. You're also going to see me use the smokes, which is part of Fuze's kit, to help me get in sight. You're going to see me get knocked down to 2 health and then continue to plant and get another kill after that. Now keep in mind, if I'm not a 3 armor, I'm dead at that point, okay? And all in all, it just shows how high the fragging capability of Fuze can be. So instead of selecting Fuze and just sprinting in the part of the map where you're going to use his cluster charges to try to get kills, start taking advantage of the rest of Fuze's kit. On the screen right now is another clip that I think is a good example of this. I'm picking Fuze on Cafe. The defenders are in Kitchen. My plan is to go above Kitchen on that soft floor, their ceiling, and use the cluster charges to try to get kills. But I'm not going to go there straight away. As I clear from the top down, I know there's things going on at the bottom of red stairs. I'm going to go down with Fuze and get a kill on somebody who's down there. Instead of going straight into where I wanted to use his cluster charge and then allowing this player to flank up and maybe kill me while I'm doing it, I go and I take advantage of the rest of Fuze's kit, namely that AK-12, and I get the kill on Vigil right there. And then I go up to where I want to use the cluster charge, and I actually do get a kill with one of the cluster charges there. And that brings us to another point when it comes to Fuze. His gadget, the cluster charge, if you are trying to get kills with it, it becomes much stronger in the second half of the round, okay? The reason for that is because in the beginning of the round, the attackers have less map control, which gives the defenders more freedom of movement. They can be spread out throughout the majority of the map, and they can also have freedom to rotate away from where the cluster charges are going off. The further that goes on in the course of a round, the less freedom that defenders have ideally, and the more map control attackers have, which means that when you put a cluster charge, if the defender tries to rotate away from it, then maybe they're in the line of sight of one of your teammates who's holding an angle, or maybe they just don't have the option to do it at all and you get a kill. So keep that in mind with the cluster charge. One thing I would recommend, especially if you're playing in a stack with Fuze, is in the first part of the round, be the flank watch. I think that you can make the argument that Fuze is probably the best flank watch in the game. You know, keep in mind that if the defenders aren't hitting headshots, he's going to absorb more bullets than most attackers, and that gun is the best gun in the game. So who better to hold a flank while, you know, the Ash is pushing forward or while the Thermite's getting a wall or something like that than the Fuze. And then once things start getting opened up, you move further in the round, Fuze can move out and you know, try to use his cluster charge to get rid of utility or, you know, get kills, whatever you want to do. But that beginning part of the round is really good. It's an opportunity for Fuze to flank watch and do something that he can be really strong at. Okay, so hopefully we've opened your eyes to how good Fuze's kit is and how high his fragging capability can be. Let's move on to the gadget now. And again, we're going to try to challenge the mindset that a lot of players have with that gadget. Fuze isn't the operator with the cluster charge that can kill people. Fuze is the operator with the cluster charge that can get rid of a lot of utility. If you have that mindset, you're going to get more out of this cluster charge at the higher levels than you will if you just try to use it to get kills. On the screen right now is a clip that shows both the good side and the bad side of that cluster charge that I'm talking about. You're going to see me use the smokes to drop Skylight and get into Freezer. Great use of Fuze's kit there. And then I get into Freezer and I place a cluster charge on the wall. And I get a kill on the Echo. And I also destroy a yokai drone, which is cool. Great job. But then instead of just holding my sights up with the best gun in the game with the plant down and trying to hold an angle, I decide to use that cluster charge again. I get tunnel vision and trying to use that cluster charge to get kills and get too cute with it. And in doing so, I'm very vulnerable and I end up dying. And that's what I'm talking about right there. Most players are way too focused on Fuze's gadget, and I've been guilty of it as well. In that situation, instead of being focused on that gadget, just hold your sights up. Just make sure that nobody can come into Freezer or cross that line of sight without you getting shots off. And you're in a much better situation than by trying to use that cluster charge again. On the screen now is a clip that shows me using his cluster charge to get rid of utility much more effectively. Okay, we're on bank. We're attacking the top floor objective. I'm just going to rappel up to the window right beside these reinforced walls. The first cluster charge gets rid of 2 of the bandit charges as well as an ADS. Next, you're going to see that I spot an evil eye at the top of square stairs. I use the cluster charge on the window there to get rid of that evil eye. And then the third cluster charge, you're going to see I go back to that window, use it again to get rid of the final 2 bandit charges that he placed down on that reinforced wall. So there, I used all 3 cluster charges. I got rid of a ton of utility by using them. And that's a much better demonstration of using his cluster charges more effectively. And I think that if you shift that mindset away from I'm going to try to get kills with the cluster charge to, you know, getting rid of utility, not only will you get more out of the cluster charge, but you're also going to be vulnerable less. You know, you're going to be in less situations where you're focused on that cluster charge and you're an easy kill for somebody. And the cluster charge is very good at getting rid of utility. This is a custom game right now that you're seeing on the screen on Consulate down in the basement here. And you can see here that with this wall, if there's bandit charges on it, there's a lot of really easy ways to get rid of those bandit charges. Buckle on the window can usually get rid of them. But if it's a cave using electric claws, that can be a little bit trickier to find those. So you see right there where they're set up. They're on the opposite sides of the wall and pretty tough to get places unless you're an IQ. But with Fuze, one cluster charge actually gets rid of both of those, as you're seeing right now. And that's just a very simple demonstration there of how easy it is to get rid of utility using his cluster charges. Now, some of you guys might be thinking, well, in that situation, I could just do that with IQ. And that's true. IQ is very effective at that. And she's also a 3-speed. But let me challenge you to think about bringing Fuze in that situation. Here's why. Okay. Best gun in the game. He also has smokes for that late plant, for that execute. You're going to have those smoke grenades available. And he's also going to be able to not only get rid of that utility, but also use the cluster charges behind white van, maybe even in kitchen, and try to shake out some defenders there. And I think when you look at that total package of what Fuze can bring in that situation versus IQ, there's a case that you can make for bringing that Fuze. Now, of course, if there's an Echo, maybe, the IQ would be the better pick. I'm not saying that Fuze 100% should be picked every single time, but I think he should be considered a lot more than he currently is. Here's another kind of interesting use of Fuze's gadget, more situational, but still something to consider. You're going to see in this clip that the person is planting right beside me. And because there's a cluster charge going off on the other side of the room, it becomes very difficult to hear. I'm going to shut up and let you listen to it, but pay attention to when they start planting and how well you can hear the plant going down.
I'm placing now. Deploying now.
Another thing to think about with Fuze is the ability for him to place a cluster charge on a door that you're going to enter and clear any barbed wire, goo mines, capcan traps, frost traps from that way that you're going to go. And on Coastline right here, you're seeing an example of that. This is the service door. I rappel upside down, place a cluster charge, and I think I only get a goo mine there. That might not seem like a big deal, but it's clearing the way for me to enter that way later in the round or right now. And, if there is a situation where there's more utility there as far as, barbed wire or something like that, it's going to clear all that. And that can be really effective. That can be really useful for the team to get rid of that utility. If they have Goyo shields placed in that vicinity, it could get rid of those. So much stuff that this can do. But how many times have you honestly thought of using Fuze's cluster charge to clear the way on a window or door that you're getting ready to enter? No, most people are thinking about going above and trying to get kills with that cluster charge. That's the mindset that I'm really trying to challenge now. Okay guys, that's going to do it for the video. The big thing to remember here is that Fuze is not the operator with the cluster charges that kill people. Fuze is the operator with the best gun in the game, first and foremost. Fuze is the operator that can withstand more damage than most other attackers. Fuze is the operator with one of the best total kits in the game. And that Fuze is the operator with the cluster charges that can get rid of a lot of utility very easily and maybe get kills in the process. Let me know what you guys think down below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll have more coming your way here soon.